But we must begin to understand that in a concept of forming inside our community a united front, a black united front, which engulfs every sector, every facet, and every person inside our community working for the benefit of black people.
The Panthers would be carrying video cameras and laptop computers, because these are the dynamic weapons of social change today. Any armed confrontation that we do right now, the military has learned how to combat guerrilla warfare. They have weapons of surveillance and techniques and informers in place so that they will use that as an excuse not only to wipe a movement out, but to level a community. So we have to understand what their response is. The purpose of war is to defeat one's enemy and preserve oneself. That being said, the weapons of war can be many, many different things. Are we at war? Absolutely. Is violence in 2012 the right way to go about doing it? And this is from someone who was a Panther. This is someone who spent time in prison. And I make it clear in the book that it wasn't all frame-ups. It wasn't all just what they did. You know, we had an active war against drug dealers in Harlem where we went in. I described one particular thing in great detail. My editor didn't want me to describe it, how we would go in gunpoint, firing weapons to take these drugs out of the community. Flush them down the toilet and to throw them into the sewer. South Africa's problem, besides, you know, we're dealing with, anytime you deal with a reformist situation, then it's rife for what's going on in South Africa and other places where you change the face of power, but you don't change the system. This is what, you know, right after Obama was elected, you know, we had this great mood in the street, but movement folks know that, you know, it doesn't matter who is in the White House. It's like if you're driving a locomotive down the train tracks and it's headed for a cliff, there's not much you can do. The locomotive is going to run in that particular direction. You have to fundamentally change the system. So we're talking about reform versus revolution. But in South Africa, there's another problem. Besides the fact that you're dealing with a system that is still, you know, a capitalist system that is about profit, and so you have a workers' movement that's rising up against some of the same problems, different people in place. But there's another problem that I speak to about my colleagues. There are more gangs in South Africa than in Chicago and New York.
Thank you. Thank you.
There are gangs that call themselves, they call themselves the 98s, the 99s. I was with a sister doing a retreat with young people, and that's her work, is doing gang intervention. And the deadliest gang in South Africa, I'm talking about kids killing each other over turf, dealing with the same problems, they call themselves the Americans.
Are we surprised?
And they're like the fear. Well, yeah, why shouldn't we be?
Right?
You might as well, like, you know, if you're picking a name, you know, who should I be, the marauder? Should I be the barbarian? Should I be, no, what sums that up best? The Americans. So what we have to do in order to really affect change, I believe the best work that we could be doing, besides this work, you know, in addition to this work against mass incarceration, is this direct intervention, healing, and empowering our youth. It's the most revolutionary thing that we can be doing. Because if you talk about that, this is why Fred Hampton got killed in Chicago. I want to be very clear. If you ever listen to Fred Hampton, go on the internet, listen to those speeches, you talk about a public speaker. And you talk about something about, you talk about, you know, even Jesse Jackson took some of what Fred Hampton would do. The first call and response that was happening in Chicago was Fred would get out there and he would get people, he would go like, I am, and the crowd would go, I am, and Fred would say, a revolutionary, I am a freedom fighter. I mean, Fred was great.
That's right.
But here was Fred's thing that was a threat to the city of Chicago. Fred and the Panthers went into a meeting, put their guns on the table with the Blackstone Rangers and all the other gangs and saying, there is no turf or no block where Panthers are not going to go. Because we're not organizing for turf, we're organizing for liberation for our people. And we have the right to intervene and be every place. And you need to be with us. And Fred started disarming the gang, not disarming the gangs, but the gangs started putting their weapons down and doing that. He turned the deadliest gang, Latino gang in Chicago, into a revolutionary organization, the Young Lords.
Thank you.
We hear the Young Lords now, we take for granted that they were political. But Cha-Cha Jimenez was a gang-banging, murdering dude. And Fred politicized him. And they became the Young Lords organization and the Young Lords party. Started talking about class struggle. He had truces going. And when you looked at the fact that the gangs outnumbered the Chicago police force, they decided that Fred Hampton had to die. So that's the work that we need to do. And for a system that is already at an alarming rate, Brother Julius, a young black man in America had a better chance of fighting on the front lines in World War II than getting old in this country. Their statistics, not mine. A young black man has a 1 in 8 chance of graduating high school, but a guaranteed a 1 in 3 shot of going to prison. Their statistics, not mine. Wendy Koff, who was a Princeton graduate.